Hi and welcome to my video, to my build that I played in 3.17. After I saw this leak's all new additions, especially the Forbidden Flame and the Forbidden Flash jewel, I decided to play an Elementalist and allocate Profane Bloom through these jewels because I really like the explosion mechanic. So after I found enough currency on my Skeleton Mage, I looked up some gems and tried out some skills and decided I wanted to go with Stormcall. It's a little bit off meta, the skill isn't really used that much and there aren't a lot of builds playing it, but I decided it looked pretty cool and it could maybe be a good combination of good clear as well as decent single target for the Arch Nemesis leak mechanic. So before we get into the build, I just wanted to mention right at the start of the video that this isn't a build that you can easily take to endgame with low investment and clear all the content. This video is like more of a documentation of the idea that I had for this skill, and maybe it's interesting for some players out there who are interested in off-meta skills or want to see something new or try something new. Yeah, so just keep that in mind if you're trying to go for this skill as well. So while going through the pros and cons of this build, in the background you can see a typical map that I farmed this league. It's just a low investment, fast mapping playstyle. Just go through the map, finish all extra content that you find, kill the boss and go into the next map. I found that this league, that's a really good farming method and it really suits the playstyle of this build because you don't have to have that much damage or that much defensives, but you can go into the fast zooming playstyle with the explosions and so on. Okay, let's get into the pros and cons of this build. One point that's kind of in between those two, I think, is that Stormcall is really off meta and nearly no one's playing it. There are like 8 entries in PoE Ninja. I think on one hand that's pretty cool because you can discover a new skill that you maybe have never seen before and try to make it work. On the contrary though, there are really few informations and ideas out there. So especially for inexperienced players it could be very frustrating, time consuming, currency consuming to make the skill work or to try it out. So going into the positive points, for me there are 3 points that I want to highlight. First of all, it's a really fast clearing build. You can easily zoom through all the low investment content, finish this pretty easily and farm a lot of currency, especially with the new Atlas tree this league. Secondly, there's the explosion playstyle that I personally enjoy the most in Path of Exile. I really like the explosion chest, the explosion gloves and Profane Bloom. So I decided to use the new jewels that were implemented this league. And still you got decent single target damage, especially when you're using the Val skill. You can just summon the Arch Nemesis monster or go to the map boss and press your Val, summon Stormcall and the monster just melts. On the contrary, the build is pretty squishy, the way I'm playing it, even with high amounts of investment. So if you don't want to die on your build, that's maybe not the right choice for you then. Or you have to change to get more defensives and maybe suffer some losses in the offense department. You have to have a lot of investment in the first place. It's not a build that you can start off with a couple of exalts. You have to have a lot of investment, especially when you are going for the Profane Bloom jewels. They are like 20x each. There are some contents that the build is really bad at, especially Simulacrum. So if you like farming that, that's maybe not the right build for you. Even with the current state, I can clear the field with some deaths, but I can't get over wave 23, 24 in the Simulacrum. And for straight bossing, it's maybe not the right build. Maybe you should play something else for that. It's more like the fast clearing zoom build. Yeah, and the real endgame content is really hard to do. You can maybe do it with a lot of investment, but yeah, you have to keep that in mind if you are going for the real endgame content, that you have to have a lot of currency pumped into the build to make it work. Okay, let's get into the build. What was my idea behind the build? I wanted to make a fast zoomy play style with explosions. To do this, I went more on the offensive than the defensive side. I used Pantheon while going on low life with the Prism Guardian Archon Kite Shield. And this way I lost some health, but I could utilize a lot of auras. And this way I could maximize my damage and get some defenses at the same time while being efficiently as possible. Okay, getting into the items now. For defensive layers I'm using 3 layers on top of my energy shield. I'm using armor, evasion and spell suppression. To get the spell suppression I crafted the boots, the gloves and the helmet myself. Because there aren't that many items out there with huge amount of spell suppression as well as energy shield. The gloves had the fractured spell suppression mod on it, which cost me a lot of currency. After that I just crafted on some additional energy shield and got the spell suppression implicit as well as the chance to unnerve enemies. Together with the boots, helmet and notes on the tree I get to 100% spell suppression. On the boots I have movement speed, a lot of chaos resistance to get me capped on that, elusive and the spell suppression as well. Then on the first ring I have some stats and some offensive modifiers. The second one is a Circle of Regret with the curse enemies with conductivity on hit implicit to use in combination with my Profane Bloom jewels. My belt, it's just a standard belt with a lot of energy shield, armor and some resistances on it. My chest piece is a Chevron's wrappings for the energy shield and the lightning damage. For the shield I'm using the Prism Guardian Archon Kite Shield to get me to low life with my auras and to use Pain Attunement. For an amulet I'm using the Presence of Chayula to get the chaos resistance to max me out on chaos resistance and get the conversion from life to energy shield. I anointed Tranquility on that to get the extra energy shield and the Transfiguration of Soul. I didn't need to anoint Charisma on that because I'm using Mana Reservation on my helmet implicit from the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds. And I crafted Spell Suppression on that as well as some more energy shield. And finally for my wand, I'm using a pretty good wand I think. It has a lot of offensive modifiers as well as the +1 level to all spell skill gems and 1 level to all lightning skill gems. I'm running 2 different flask setups. I got one flask setup for the fast zooming mapping. For this one I got a Quicksilver flask with additional effect, an Onslaught flask, a Basalt flask with additional movement speed, a Diamond flask with movement speed and a Sulfur flask with movement speed. When I'm doing hard bosses or any harder content, I'm swapping the Basalt flask out for another one without the movement speed but with increased armor. Diamond flask without the additional movement speed but with leeched energy shield during flask effect. I got a Starlight Chalice which I found gives in addition to the ward a lot of damage. And a Bottle Faith to swap out the normal Sulfur flask because I don't need the additional movement speed when I'm fighting, for example, Maven. For my gem setup I went for Vaal Stormcall. The Vaal version is really important in my opinion to kill those big enemies, the bosses, the Arch Nemesis mobs way quicker than just with your normal Stormcall. I combined it with Awakened Spell Cascade support to have way better clear in maps, with Awakened added lightning damage support for just more damage, Awakened Spell Echo support, Inspiration support for better mana efficiency, and less duration support. You have to have less duration support in there in my opinion, because without the gem it just feels way too clunky and the delay of the Stormcall is way too big for a good feeling playstyle. For bosses or real single target damage, if you want to do the Searing Exarch or do Maven or any big boss, you can swap the Spell Cascade support for a concentrated effect support. I found that this is the highest damage output I received in my build with the gem swap. Because of the golem nodes in my ascendancy, I'm using 3 golems. I'm using the lightning, the fire and the ice golem. I could use a 4th one, but I decided to go for the animate guardian instead, in combination with elemental army support and minion life support, because I found that the guardian gives me a lot of deep DPS, while also not dying because of those 2 support gems. I'm using a rather expensive setup for the animate guardian though. It's Crown of the Tyrant, which gives me a lot of added lightning damage, the doppelganger guys from the Maven, the Kingmaker Axe, which gives me the Cull and the crit multi, as well as some elemental weakness curse gloves and apply an additional curse boots. So in total I got 3 curses running on the enemies. I got the conductivity from my ring that I'm using to pop the Profane Bloom as well. I can apply Assassin's Mark because of Whispers of Doom in my tree. And I can use the elemental weakness from my animate guardian. Next I got Flame Dash in combination with Arcane Surge support. It's pretty basic, just to get some more mana regen and damage. And lastly I have Molten Shell running on my left click, just to get some extra defensive layer for some, I think 3000 extra damage. Because I'm on low life, I can use a lot of auras to boost my damage and defensives. I got 8 auras running. In my shield I got Zealotry, Determination and Wrath to put me on low life and to use up all my life. In my helmet I got Herald of Thunder and Clarity, as well as Defiance Banner. And in my boots I just have Discipline and Haste. You could swap Haste for Grace, but I like the movement speed and cast speed more than the defensives you get from Grace. For my Pantheon I'm using the Soul of the Brine King as the big one, for Cannot Be Frozen and Reduced Chill effect. I really like that one. And for the minor one I'm using Soul of Aberrath, because I'm running the Searing Exarch, and yeah, that just negates a lot of damage I'm getting from those mobs and the Burning Ground. Okay, getting into the ascendancy points in the passive tree next. I'm using Mastermind of Discord, Shaper of Storms to always shock, and the 2 golem ascendancy nodes, because I found that they are a little bit more consistent than Bastion of Elements and Heart of Destruction. I'm using Pain Attunement because I'm on low life. I'm using Energy from Within down here to convert all those nodes into Energy Shield. I'm using those 3 nodes as well as the Mastery from the Spell Suppression. Together with my boots, gloves and helmet I get to 100%. I'm using the 2 aura and mana reservation efficiency nodes right here. I'm using 2 big cluster jewels, both with Stormdrinker, Prismatic Heart and Widespread Destruction, but I'm currently not allocating Widespread Destruction because I don't have enough skill points. For the medium cluster jewels I'm using 2 with Quick Getaway and Pressure Points. In the jewel sockets there are the Forbidden Flame and the Forbidden Flesh jewel with the Profane Bloom. Here right in the middle I'm using a Thread of Hope because it allows me to allocate a lot of good notables without having to go through all the bad little ones. Over here I got an Watcher's Eye with increased critical strike chance and lightning damage while affected by Wrath, as well as another medium cluster jewel with Overshock and Astonishing Affliction. I found that those 2 nodes are the ones that give me the most damage. In the jewel socket I just got a standard jewel with some stats that I needed, and energy shield as well as some crit stats. So that was all the information to my build that I played this league. I hope you liked it and maybe got some ideas or inspiration to play something like that on your own. I'm leaving all the links and the POB and so on in the video description, so you can go there if you want to check that out. Leave any questions you got regarding the build in the comment sections, and I'm getting to them and respond to you. I'm leaving you now with a Maven kill at the end, so you can see that even the big bosses are possible on this build, not just the fast mapping. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.
Behold my collection.
I will have what I want. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Cascade of pain. Stand still. Why?
Resistance will be punished. Time contorts. Scurry, scurry.
My irritation is growing. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Do what I say.
Death made real.
A cascade of pain. Oh!
When I'm ready,
Stop
and not
resisting. Punishment inescapable. The most beloved toy.
Arrogant toy. Take this. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Stand still.
I need more mana.
Cascade of pain. Stand still. Take this. A cascade of